Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story of resilience, innovation, and quiet triumph, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Every week, we bring you powerful, inspiring tales of individuals who overcame betrayal, corporate challenges, and personal setbacks to achieve extraordinary victories. Your support helps us continue sharing these stories that remind us all of the strength we carry within. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know what part of the story inspired you the most, or share your own experiences. And if you know someone who needs a little encouragement today, consider sharing this video with them. Together, we're building a community that celebrates courage, integrity, and perseverance. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video. Caroline, after 23 years, we're eliminating your entire division, Brandon announced, his tone flat, devoid of empathy. Your last day is Friday. I sat across from him in his sleek, glass-walled office, the Chicago skyline glittering behind him like an ironic backdrop to my professional execution. Brandon Latham had been promoted to regional director just 9 months ago, and in that time, he had systematically unraveled everything I had spent more than 2 decades building. Swallowing the bitter lump rising in my throat, I nodded, calm and measured. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said softly. His shoulders eased a fraction. He had clearly braced for outrage, perhaps tears or pleading. Instead, I rose, smoothed the hem of my navy suit, and extended my hand. The handshake was brief, his relief unmistakable. He believed this was the end of my story at Meridian Technologies. My name is Caroline Liu, and at 54, I never expected to be restarting from scratch. When I joined Meridian back in 2002, we were a tiny firm scraping by, trying to disrupt the energy storage market. I had poured my life into those early years, late nights in the lab, holiday weekends spent troubleshooting prototypes, skipped anniversaries and birthdays, all in pursuit of a dream that had, in time, become a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Our lithium-sulfur battery systems had grown from experimental ideas into the gold standard powering everything from electric buses to renewable energy grids. And now, with a few strokes of a pen, Brandon had outsourced the entire R&D division to a firm in Seoul. As I walked back to my floor, where a dozen engineers sat silently processing the same devastating news, I kept my composure. Amanda, my brightest mentee, looked up from her desk, her brown eyes rimmed with tears. "They can't do this," she whispered fiercely. "You built the LS9000 platform. Nobody knows it like you." I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It'll be okay," I said, though I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. What I couldn't tell her, what no one except my attorney knew, was the quiet secret that had protected me all these years. In 2010, when Meridian faced bankruptcy, I had struck an unconventional deal with the original CEO. Rather than taking a well-earned promotion and higher salary, I agreed to stay on at a lower pay rate in exchange for retaining intellectual property rights to certain innovations I developed. The company had secured exclusive licenses for those patents as long as I remained employed, a clause buried in an old contract filed away and forgotten by nearly everyone. Brandon didn't know that the patents covering the proprietary electrolyte formula used in the LS9000 series, the product responsible for 45% of Meridian's annual revenue, were registered under my name. The South Korean firm he hired wouldn't be able to replicate or manufacture the core components without infringing on my rights. That afternoon, as I quietly boxed up my belongings, an email from HR landed in my inbox. The severance offer was insulting, 14 weeks for 23 years of service. But what they had yet to realize was that the real cost would come later. 23 years ago, I had walked into Meridian's cramped, makeshift office with nothing but a beat-up satchel and relentless determination. Back then, our lab was little more than a converted warehouse with faulty heat and a temperamental power supply. Now, as I gazed one last time at the polished glass and chrome of the corporate tower, I felt a quiet satisfaction. They thought they had erased me. But they had no idea that I had quietly woven the very foundation beneath them, and I was about to pull it away. Just 2 stories of a repurposed brick factory, drafty in winter and always faintly smelling of machine grease. "Welcome to the team," Martin Reyes, the founder, had told me that first morning, shaking my hand with infectious enthusiasm. "We can't offer a fancy paycheck yet, but you'll have ownership over everything you build here. We're going to change the world, Lena." And Martin had meant every word, both in spirit and in writing. When I engineered the initial prototype of what would later evolve into our lithium-ion capacitor system, the company was dangling on the edge of collapse, determined not to let my work become swallowed up by a buyout or creditor claims. Martin had crafted an unusual licensing agreement. "We get exclusive use as long as you're here," he'd explained over late-night coffee in the drafty office. "But the patents remain in your name. It's protection for both sides. If this place makes it, we both win." As years passed and PowerCore Energy transformed from a scrappy underdog into a leader in clean energy solutions, that agreement quietly drifted into obscurity. Martin retired nearly a decade ago, and every new leadership layer seemed less aware or less interested in the arrangements that had once kept the company afloat. Brandon, with his Ivy League credentials and sharp focus on quarterly earnings, had clearly never bothered digging into those old contracts. For 23 years, I had been the steady architect behind PowerCore's breakthroughs. I never sought headlines or public recognition, only the quiet pride of solving intricate challenges and nurturing the next generation of engineers like Amanda. Our team was lean but powerful, responsible for 4 critical product families that collectively generated more than half of the company's annual revenue. But Brandon's data-driven lens reduced us to a line item, a dozen engineers with high domestic salaries that, on paper, could be swapped for a larger offshore team at a fraction of the expense. What his spreadsheets failed to capture were the intangible assets, the historical knowledge, the nuanced expertise, and above all, the ownership rights to the key patents. The week following Brandon's announcement blurred into forms, exit interviews, and quiet farewells. I met with each of my engineers privately, offering career advice, references, and connections in the industry. At our farewell lunch, Amanda wiped her eyes with a napkin. "What's next for you?" she asked, her voice small beneath the restaurant's lunchtime chatter. I gave a quiet, knowing smile. "I'm not finished yet," I replied. "Sometimes being counted out is the best position to play from." She frowned in confusion, but I left my intentions unspoken. Friday was coming fast, and with it, the moment I'd been preparing for. On my final morning, I arrived before dawn, 5:45 a.m., when only the janitorial crew and security guards were on site. I had secured early building access under the pretense of gathering personal items from various lab spaces. But in truth, I was making a pilgrimage, saying a private goodbye to the innovations I had birthed from sketches to industry game-changers. The Advanced Systems Lab had been my second home for over 2 decades. I trailed my fingers across the prototype of the LSX-1, our breakthrough model proudly displayed in the lobby's glass case. Beside it stood each subsequent evolution, culminating in the LSX-5000, PowerCore's flagship product and revenue cornerstone. Each machine embodied years of dedication, late nights, failed experiments, and eventual triumphs. By 7:45 a.m., the building slowly filled with employees. Some stopped by my office, now half-packed in recycled boxes, to offer bittersweet goodbyes. At 9:30 a.m., Brandon himself appeared at my door, clipboard in hand. At 11 a.m., my team assembled for one final gathering in the small conference room overlooking the river. "It's been an absolute privilege working alongside each of you," I told them, willing my voice to stay strong despite the lump forming in my throat. "No matter where you go next, don't forget that what we accomplished here made an impact." At noon sharp, Brandon's assistant appeared at my door with a folder in hand, her expression detached, rehearsed. "These need your signature," she said, setting the papers on my desk with professional formality. I signed each page without a word, slid my badge across the table, and thanked her politely. By 2:30 p.m., I walked out of the glass tower's revolving doors for the last time, a single cardboard box cradled in my arms, containing 23 years of memories condensed into photos, plaques, and personal mementos. That evening, I sat across from my attorney, Maxwell, in his Midtown office, as he flipped through a thick binder of contracts and agreements. "Everything checks out," Maxwell confirmed, closing the file with a satisfied nod. "The patent rights are airtight. Their license to use the technology was tied directly to your employment status. And this new consulting proposal I've drafted, let's just say it tips the scales back in your favor." He laid out the details again: consulting compensation at 5 times my former salary, full authority over product updates, and veto power on any system modifications. "It's aggressive," Maxwell admitted, "but considering their dependence on your technology, they won't have many alternatives." "How long before they realize they're cornered?" I asked quietly. "Depends on how soon they try to implement changes or push upgrades," Maxwell replied thoughtfully. "The systems will keep running for now, but the moment they attempt any updates or alterations, the licensing validation kicks in. I'd give it maybe 2 weeks tops." I nodded, feeling an unexpected mix of emotions: relief, melancholy, and a quiet thrill of vindication. "Send the cease and desist on Monday, but hold the consulting proposal until they come knocking," I instructed. The weekend stretched before me, unusually open. On Saturday, I spent hours in my small backyard, pulling weeds, pruning rose bushes, and planting summer perennials, an act of clearing the old to make space for new beginnings. On Sunday, I drove out to the Indiana dunes, hiking along windswept trails and watching daring paragliders leap from the sandy cliffs, catching invisible currents in the sky. Their determination reminded me of the risks I'd taken long ago and the new ones I was about to embrace. Monday arrived without alarms or obligations. For the first time in decades, I sat by the kitchen window, sipping coffee slowly, savoring the morning light. At exactly 9 a.m., Maxwell hit send on the legal notice to PowerCore's corporate counsel. The countdown had officially begun. The first phone call came just 3 days later, even faster than we'd anticipated. "Caroline? This is Rachel from legal over at PowerCore." The voice on the line sounded tense, brittle. "We received some rather troubling communication from your attorney. Surely there's been some mistake." "No mistake, Rachel," I answered evenly. "The patents for the LSX system are registered under my name. The company's exclusive license was valid only while I remained employed. That agreement is no longer in effect." A heavy silence filled the air. "Can we arrange a meeting to resolve this?" Rachel asked carefully. "All communication now goes through Maxwell," I replied. "He has my full authority." Over the next several days, the calls escalated: first Rachel, then the general counsel, then the VP of engineering, each more frantic than the last. I directed them all to Maxwell, who kept me updated with a wry smile. "They're scrambling," he reported during our Thursday check-in. "Their offshore team can't modify the software without triggering the validation. Development on the LSX 5000 upgrade is completely frozen." A pang of worry surfaced as I thought of my former colleagues. "Have they tried reaching out to Amanda or the others?" I asked Maxwell during our next call. "From what I've gathered, they've been scrambling to rehire your whole department," he replied. "But it sounds like most have already moved on." "Amanda started with Zenith Innovations on Monday." I smiled at that. Zenith had been one of our fiercest rivals, and Amanda's brilliance would shine even brighter there. 9 days after I left, the inevitable happened. Brandon himself called. I let the phone ring until voicemail picked up. "Caroline, this is Brandon." His voice came through, unusually urgent. "We really need to discuss the patent matter immediately. This is creating serious operational disruptions. Please call me as soon as possible." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the recording to Maxwell with a short note. "Let them wait another week. During that week, I treated myself to a getaway in Door County, staying at a quiet lakeside inn. Mornings were spent walking wooded trails beneath the turning leaves, afternoons soaking in a steaming outdoor whirlpool overlooking the bay. For the first time in years, I felt the knots in my shoulders loosen. Sleep came easily, free of deadlines and unfinished blueprints. When I returned home, 4 new voicemails awaited me, each message from Brandon sounding progressively more desperate. The last one abandoned any corporate veneer. "Caroline, please. The board's coming down hard on me. We've had to halt 3 production lines. Whatever you want, let's negotiate. Just, please call me back." Maxwell informed me that PowerCore's stock had fallen 13% since whispers of their production troubles reached market analysts. An emergency board meeting was scheduled for Friday. "Time to present our offer," I told him calmly. "Send over the consulting contract." The proposal was simple but firmly advantageous: exclusive licensing of my patents at favorable but profitable rates, consulting services at 5 times my prior salary, veto power over any system updates, and direct oversight of training the new engineering teams both in Chicago and remotely in Seoul. Thursday morning, a knock came at my door. I opened it to see Brandon standing on my porch, his usual polished exterior replaced with rumpled clothes and hollowed eyes. "Caroline," he started, his voice low and tired. "The board's removed me as director. I've been reassigned to regional sales. I just wanted to speak with you before I leave town." I studied him carefully, not with triumph at his fall, but with a quiet understanding that he still hadn't learned the lesson this ordeal carried. "Brandon, this was never personal," I said evenly. "It was always about honoring the value of what's been built over decades." He stared at the ground, unable to meet my gaze. "The interim director wants to meet with you. Eleanor Reyes." I blinked at the name. "Martin's daughter?" Brandon nodded. "She's been brought in to manage the crisis." Eleanor Reyes had her father's perceptive eyes, sharp, probing, and unwilling to accept surface answers. We met at a quiet cafe near the lakefront, far from the corporate campus. She stirred her tea slowly, thoughtful. "I flew back from Madrid the moment I heard," she said. "My father always said you were the heart of PowerCore's innovation. I regret not staying closer after he stepped down." Unlike her father, Eleanor had charted an international path, leading renewable energy initiatives across Europe and Asia. Yet sitting across from me now, I could see the same quiet fire, the same dedication. "We can't undo the past," she said softly, "but maybe we can chart a better future together." Though she had held a modest stake in PowerCore, Eleanor had remained a distant board member until now. "The board has tasked me with resolving this," she continued, her tone calm but purposeful. "They've unanimously accepted your consulting agreement." I raised an eyebrow. "That didn't take long." "Operations have ground to a halt across our flagship product lines," Eleanor admitted. "The Seoul team is capable, but without access to the foundational systems, they're paralyzed. Every day stalled is costing millions." Brandon's decision to offshore critical work. Her expression tightened. "It's being re-examined." His judgment fell short. I took a thoughtful sip of my tea. "This arrangement isn't simply about compensation, Eleanor. It's about honoring the creative process and those who made it possible." She nodded, her gaze unwavering. "That's exactly why I'm suggesting an addition to the agreement." She pulled a folder from her bag and slid a document across the table. I scanned the contents, my brows lifting in surprise. "Senior Vice President of Innovation," I read aloud, "with a seat on the executive board?" Eleanor gave a firm nod. "We don't just need your patents, Caroline. We need your leadership. Your ideas can't be outsourced. I want you to lead a new division focused entirely on emerging technologies, with full autonomy and direct access to the board." It was an unexpected, flattering offer, but experience had taught me to tread carefully. "And the overseas team?" I asked. "They'll remain responsible for routine support and implementation under your supervision," Eleanor explained. "But the heart of innovation returns here, under your direction, with authority to rebuild. I thought of Amanda and the others now scattered across rival firms. I'll need to recruit fresh talent, and I'll need competitive salaries to pull them back. Approved, Eleanor replied without hesitation. The board has authorized a flexible budget. Use what you need. We spent another hour working through logistics. By the time we parted ways, I had given my tentative acceptance, contingent on a final review with Maxwell. That evening, Maxwell combed through the agreement line by line. Halfway through, he paused, then looked up, impressed. "Caroline," he said slowly, tapping a clause, "this position includes equity, 5% ownership, vested immediately." I stared at him, stunned. He chuckled at my reaction. "Eleanor's not playing around," he said. 5% makes you one of the largest individual shareholders." I exhaled a quiet laugh. After everything they put me through, it's hard to believe. Life has a way of correcting itself sometimes, Maxwell mused. This is a remarkable full-circle moment. The following Monday, I stepped back into PowerCore headquarters, this time not as a departing employee, but as a leader. Instead of heading to my old floor, I was escorted to the executive wing. Eleanor had arranged a spacious corner office with sweeping views of both Lake Michigan and the Chicago skyline. On the desk sat a small, wrapped box. Inside was a framed photograph of Martin Reyes and me from 2006, standing proudly beside the first production model of the LSEX system. A handwritten note in Eleanor's looping script read, "Dad always said you were PowerCore's soul. Time to make it official." As I arranged my new workspace, my phone buzzed. A message from Amanda lit up the screen. "Heard a rumor. You're back." "True." I smiled, tapping a reply. "Better than back. Want to trade Zenith for a shot at building something revolutionary together?" Her answer came instantly. "I'll resign today." Everything was aligning, but the most startling discovery was yet to unfold. 2 weeks into my new position, I submitted a formal request for full access to PowerCore's financial and operational records from the past 5 years. As Senior Vice President of Innovation with board-level authority, no one could deny the request now. What I uncovered shook the executive team to its core. Brandon's outsourcing initiative wasn't his brainchild alone. He had been collaborating with outside consultants from Horizon Capital, a private equity group that had been quietly amassing PowerCore stock under various subsidiary names. Their scheme was textbook: slash expenses, inflate short-term margins, then offload the company to a buyer before the underlying damage surfaced. "The timeline is too precise to be coincidence," I explained during an emergency board meeting that afternoon. Brandon was appointed 9 months ago. By month 3, Horizon started accumulating shares through intermediaries. 5 months in, he pushes to offshore our innovation division, despite posting record earnings. Eleanor leaned in, her gaze sharp. "You're suggesting Brandon was intentionally placed here to execute this plan?" "That's what the data points to," I confirmed, projecting a series of internal emails I'd recovered from company servers. He was corresponding with Horizon executives even before joining PowerCore. Every internal audit, every cost-cutting initiative was funneled directly to them. Howard Keller, the board's longest-serving member, paled. "They're buying patterns. They were maneuvering toward a takeover." "Exactly," I said grimly. "If they'd reached a controlling stake, PowerCore would have been stripped and sold piece by piece. Our proprietary systems would have been licensed out to competitors, and our market position erased." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Their scheme failed because they didn't account for your ownership of the core patents." "An oversight in their due diligence," I replied quietly. The weight of how narrowly we had avoided collapse settled over the room. If those patents had been company property, nothing would have stood in Horizon's way. My dismissal would have been just the first domino in dismantling everything Martin Reyes had built. "We need to act immediately," Eleanor ordered. "Howard, start implementing a shareholder rights plan. Caroline, work with legal to secure every remaining piece of intellectual property. We'll reconvene tomorrow to plan the next phase." As the others filed out, Eleanor motioned for me to stay. "You've saved this company twice," she said softly. "First by developing the technology that put us on the map. And now by stopping this takeover before it succeeded." I shook my head gently. "Your father saved PowerCore the day he decided that creators deserved protection as much as their creations. That licensing structure was his vision, not mine." Eleanor smiled thoughtfully. "He always told me the same, that his smartest move wasn't just investing in innovation, but investing in you. Everyone called him crazy for it. Looks like he wasn't." The next several weeks were a blur of high-stakes action. We launched an aggressive defense against the hostile bid, including a poison pill strategy to dilute any attempt at majority control. Brandon was swiftly terminated for breaching fiduciary duty, with documentation of his collaboration handed over to federal investigators. Most rewarding of all was rebuilding the innovation division from the ground up. Amanda agreed to return as Deputy VP, bringing 2 more former colleagues back with her. Together, we set out. We set our sights on crafting a new generation of intelligent energy systems, designs so advanced they made our current technologies seem like relics. A month after revealing Horizon Capital's plot, I received a handwritten invitation to visit Martin Reyes himself, now semi-retired in Santa Fe. His health had waned, but his mind was as sharp as ever. "I always knew they'd underestimate you," he said warmly, his aged hands cupping a steaming mug of herbal tea. Quiet brilliance flies under the radar of those chasing quarterly wins. "I learned that from you," I replied sincerely. Martin leaned forward, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Want to hear the best part of this whole saga?" I smiled. "What's that?" "There's one more patent they never uncovered. The most valuable one of all." His revelation sent me scouring old company archives. What I unearthed hidden deep within the original filings left me stunned. A foundational patent for an adaptive intelligence framework, not only powering the LSX series, but designed to support every future iteration of our core technology. Filed quietly under a separate entity, Ascendant Engineering Partners, the patent was jointly owned by Martin and me. It granted sweeping protection over the underlying principles behind our most successful systems, extending far beyond the expiration dates of our existing patents. He built a safety net, I explained to Eleanor after Maxwell confirmed the document's authenticity. If PowerCore ever faced a crisis, this could either shield it or serve as powerful leverage. Eleanor tapped the folder thoughtfully. "And because it's outside your employment contract, even if Horizon had found the others, they never would have accessed this." The timing couldn't have been more critical. Despite our defensive maneuvers, Horizon had amassed sufficient stock to demand a seat at the table. Their appointee, Nathan Cole, arrived at headquarters for his inaugural board meeting wearing smug confidence. "I'm here to help realign operations," he announced to the boardroom with barely concealed superiority. "PowerCore's potential has been stifled by legacy thinking." Eleanor exchanged a quiet glance with me before replying. "We welcome new insights, Mr. Cole. In fact, we have some news of our own regarding our intellectual property." I stepped forward, setting the patent portfolio onto the table. This master patent, predating all existing products, has just been reassigned to PowerCore's exclusive control under specific provisions protecting our innovation team. Cole's confident expression crumbled as he read the documents. His color drained. This covers the entire architecture," he stammered. "That's correct," I confirmed, smiling faintly. "All of it." Within weeks, Horizon's entire scheme unraveled. Without ownership of the foundational technology, acquiring PowerCore would have left them with nothing but infrastructure. Their shares were quietly dumped on the open market at a substantial loss. Cole resigned after just 2 board sessions. Rumor had it Horizon had shown him the door shortly thereafter. Sometimes failure writes its own penalties. With the external threat neutralized, our focus shifted inward. Amanda and I co-led an exhaustive review of PowerCore's innovation portfolio, mapping gaps and uncovering new possibilities. Our revitalized division, a dynamic mix of returning veterans and eager newcomers, launched into designing breakthrough systems poised to secure PowerCore's industry dominance for the next decade. But even more fulfilling was championing a company-wide reform on intellectual property ownership. Under the updated policy, engineers would gain direct equity in their innovations while PowerCore retained exclusive usage rights. The initiative, soon known internally as the Reyes Protocol in Eleanor's honor, garnered attention as a pioneering approach to aligning corporate priorities with individual recognition. When inventors have a vested interest, creativity flourishes, I shared during the company-wide meeting unveiling the new structure. This isn't just about patents, it's about honoring the people whose ideas shape our future. Brandon's successor, a thoughtful leader named Sophia Patel, with both engineering expertise and operational acumen, embraced the policy without hesitation. Where Brandon had viewed the department as a cost center, Sophia saw the irreplaceable value of deep expertise and inventive thinking. "I wonder what Brandon would say if he knew how it turned out," Amanda mused one afternoon as we mapped out the next product cycle. "Honestly," I answered, smiling softly, "I don't think about him. This was never about settling scores. It's always been about honoring the worth of both the technology and those behind it." Overhearing our exchange, Eleanor nodded with quiet approval. "That's exactly why you're the right person for this role, Caroline," she said warmly. At last, the balance had been restored. The foundation I'd laid over 23 years had grown into a protective canopy, not just shielding me, but uplifting every innovator who dared to dream boldly within PowerCore's walls. Reflecting on the path from hands-on engineer to executive leader, I understood something profound. Real influence had always lived not in flashy titles or corner offices, but in the quiet persistence of those who built, rather than those who merely claimed credit.